Hey, I was on the phone with my mom earlier today. I had a nice long conversation with her.
Oh, how's she doing?
Yeah, she's doing good. She said to tell you hello, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I thought this kind of came out of the blue. I'd never heard it before, but she was telling me how my nephew moved.
Oh, he just moved?
Yeah, they had been living in the city limits and now they're living in the county. So that means he's no longer going to be going to the city schools. He'll be going to a county school. He's changed school districts.
Oh, wow, that can actually be pretty traumatic to do something like that as a kid. I mean,
Yeah, and they've just started back to school, so I'm wondering how he's doing at a completely new school, new kids, everything being new.
well, at least he didn't have to move like in the middle of the school year. I mean, that can be really difficult from an educational standpoint, and you know, it's really tough to get settled in, especially when you do it mid-year.
That's
Uh,
true, and although, he's still in the same area, he's close enough to still be participating in the same little league sports. Like I think he's still going to be on the same baseball team. So he'll still see those same kids.
oh, that's good. That'll make the transition easier.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, man, you know what? That just made me remember the time when I moved as a kid. I was pretty fortunate. I only moved one time, and some kids have to move a lot. Like army brats, for example. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had some friends whose parents were in the army, and they moved a lot. But I guess it's easier when you're younger. But there comes a point where it gets really difficult, like when you're a teenager. Like
Oh yeah.
when I
I
moved, I was just about a teenager, so I know.
Well, I've only moved once too when I was a child, and I was 8, and that was pretty tough for me.
Yeah. Well, you can't imagine how difficult it must have been for me. I mean, I moved from New York, where I lived my entire life. My whole family was there. I had never moved before, so all my friends lived there. And then I moved to Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania. I mean, it was a complete
Oh
culture
gosh.
shock.
Yeah, I bet.
And what's worse is not only did it seem different to me, I seemed totally different to all the kids there because I mean, first off, I had this really thick New York accent. So right off the bat, they knew right away that I was not from there.
You're right.
It was obvious I was the new kid on the block.
Uh-huh.
And I looked different also because the style in New York was much different than it was in Pennsylvania.
Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss, and we just wanted to let you know that this material is copyrighted in the year 2008 by Learn Real English LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com.
1. This is a two-part conversation. Now, in this first conversation, I'm talking with Joe about my nephew moving. Then Joe and I start talking about how we each moved when we were younger. Okay, let's begin with the conversation. I start out by saying, hey. And hey is just, I'm just trying to get Joe's attention here. So I say, hey, I was on the phone with my mom earlier today. I had a nice long conversation with her. And Joe says, oh, how's she doing? Now, oh here, this is just filler. It's not really needed. You could take it away from the sentence and the sentence would still make sense. How's she doing? How's is short for how is. And doin' is short for doing. Now, as I say in every lesson, you will hear words that are shortened, and you won't really see these shortened words in written English. You'll definitely hear them, though, in conversational English. Okay, moving along, and then I say, yeah. Yeah is just slang or informal or casual for yes. And I go on to say, she's doing good. And then I say, she said to tell you hello, by the way. Now, by the way, this means in addition to, but it's less important. It's not as important as what I had been talking about. By the way. An example of this would be if, let's say, Joe and I were talking about a trip that we're going to be taking to Africa at the end of the year. So we're talking about this trip to Africa, and then I say, oh, by the way, I'm going to eat dinner with AJ tonight. That's an example of by the way. Okay, and then getting back to the conversation, Joe says, oh, nice. And then I say, yeah, I thought this kind of came out of the blue. Now, kind of is just filler here. It's not really needed. Out of the blue. Out of the blue means sudden and unexpected. Out of the blue. For example, out of the blue, my mother told me today that my cousin just had a baby. I didn't even know that she was pregnant. Out of the blue. And I go on to say, I'd never heard it before, but she was telling me how my nephew moved. Tellin'. This is short for telling. And then Joe says, oh, he just moved? Now, this is really filler here. You could take it away and the sentence would still make sense. And I say, yeah, is just filler. And I go on to say, they had been living in the city limits. Or I'm saying they had been living inside the city. And then I say, and now they're living in the county. Now, a county, this is a large area that has a city or cities within it. For example, you have a city or cities, and then you have a county that has the city or cities within it. And then a state has counties in it, within it. And I go on to say, so that means he's no longer gonna be going to the city schools. Now, gonna, this is just slang for going to. And I go on to say, he'll be going to a county school. He's changed school districts, or he's changed schools. So basically what I'm saying here is my nephew has been living in a city called Gainesville. It's in the state of Georgia. And he and his family have moved out of the city, moved into the county. So he's changing schools. He won't be going to a Gainesville city school anymore. He'll be going to a school that's in the county, in the area that's outside of the city. And then Joe says, oh, wow. Now, here he's just showing emotions such as, wow, I feel sorry for him. And Joe goes on to say, that can actually be pretty traumatic. Now, actually is just filler here. It's not really needed. And pretty here is very, very traumatic. Traumatic, this means something that's difficult and upsetting. Traumatic. For example, when Kim was a child, she was in the car when her mother crashed the car. It was a traumatic experience. Traumatic. Okay, so getting back to the conversation, Joe's saying, it can actually be pretty traumatic to do something like that as a kid, to do something such as that as a kid or child. And Joe says, so Joe's starting to say what I'm trying to say. And then I say, yeah, and they've just started back to school. So I'm saying they've just started the new school year. And then I say, so I'm wondering, or I'm saying I've been thinking about him and And I go on to say how he's doing at a completely new school. New kids, everything being new. And Joe says, well is just filler here. It's not really needed. And Joe says, at least, or he's saying it's good, he didn't have to move like meh in the middle of the school year. I mean, that can be really difficult, or that can be very difficult from an educational standpoint. Now, educational standpoint, this is describing education. For example, when I was a child and my family moved, we moved to an area that had much better schools. So I would say that moving was good from an educational standpoint. Educational standpoint. And Joe goes on to say, and you know is short for you know. And Joe says, it's really tough, or he's saying it's very difficult to get settled in. Settled in. This means adjusted or used to. Settled in. For example, I can remember the flight to Thailand being 20 hours long. It was so long. Because it was so long, it took me a day to get settled in. Settled in. And then Joe goes on to say, especially, or he's saying most importantly, when you do it mid-year. Now, mid-year, this means in the middle of the year. And then I say, that's true. And although, or I'm saying even though, he's still in the same area, he's close enough to still be participating in, or he's close enough to still be playing in the same Little League sports. Now, is just filler. It's not really needed. Little League sports. This is a group of sports teams for children. Little League sports. An example of Little League sports would be Joe played Little League sports when he was a child. He loved to play baseball. Little League sports. And then I go on to say, and like is just filler here. I think he's still going to be on the same baseball team. So he'll still see those same kids. Or he'll still be around those same kids. And Joe says, oh, that's good. That'll make the transition easier. Transition. This is change. Transition. For example, when Joe moved at the age of 12, it was a difficult transition. He missed his friends in New York. Transition. And then I say, right. So I'm just saying yes. I'm agreeing with Joe. And then Joe says, wow, man. Now, he's just showing emotion here. And Joe goes on to say, you know what? That just made me remember the time when I moved as a kid. I was pretty fortunate. Fortunate. This means lucky. Fortunate. An example of fortunate is Harry is very fortunate. One day he was walking home from work and he found $100. Fortunate. And then Joe goes on to say, I only moved one time. And some kids have to move a lot. Like army brats, for example. Army brats. These are children of parents who are in the military, who usually move a lot. Now, the military is the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or the Marines. That's what military is or means. an example of army brats would be, when I was younger, I knew a girl named Katie. She was an army brat. Her family moved 5 times in 6 years. Army brat, or in this example, army brats. And continuing with the conversation, I then say, yeah. I'm just agreeing with Joe. And then Joe says, I mean, I've had some friends whose parents were in the army and they moved a lot. But, you know, I guess it's easier when you're younger, but there comes a point where... Now, comes a point. This means comes a time. There comes a time. For example, there comes a point when most Americans leave their parents' home or homes to go to college, to start working, or to start a family. Comes a point. And Joe goes on to say, you know, it gets really difficult. Like when you're a teenager. Now, teenager, this is a person between 13 and 19 years old. Teenager. An example of teenager would be, in America, teenagers are not allowed to drink alcohol. You have to be 21 years old. Teenager. And then I say, oh yeah, I've... And Joe says, when I moved, I was just about a teenager, so I know. So Joe's saying, I was just about a teenager. I was almost a teenager. And then I say, well, I've only moved once too. Or I'm saying, I've only moved once also. And I go on to say, when I was a child, and I was 8. So I'm saying I was 8 years old. And I go on to say, and that was pretty tough for me. And Joe says, yeah, well, you can't imagine, or he's saying you can't even think how difficult it must have been for me. I mean, I moved from New York, where I had lived my entire life, or he's saying I'd lived my whole life. And then he says, my whole family was there. Now, what he's talking about is his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins. So that would be his extended family. His immediate family would be his mother, his father, his brothers, his sisters. So he's saying his whole family was there, his whole extended family, his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins. And then Joe goes on to say, you know, I had never moved before, so all my friends lived there. And then I moved to Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, this is a northeastern state in America. Pennsylvania. And Joe goes on to say, rural Pennsylvania. Rural, this is an area where there is farmland. Rural. An example of rural would be, Joe moved from New York to a rural part of the country. He had never lived near a farm before that time. Rural. It's the opposite of city. And then Joe goes on to say, I mean, it was a complete, or he's starting to say here, it was a total, and I say, oh gosh, I'm just showing emotion, like, I don't believe it. And then Joe finishes by saying culture shock. It was a complete or total culture shock. Culture shock. This is a feeling, or this is when you feel uncomfortable, when you move to another place and the people are different than the place you lived before. So feeling uncomfortable when you move to another place and the people are different than the place you lived before. That's culture shock. For example, I can remember when I moved to Korea, it was a culture shock. I'd never been to an Asian country before. It was very different from America. Culture shock. And then I say, yeah, I bet. I bet means I agree. I bet. And then Joe says, and And here is just filler. It's not really needed. Joe goes on to say, what's worse is not only did it seem different to me, I seemed totally, or he's saying I seemed completely or very different to all the kids there. And then I just laugh. And Joe says, because, first off, or he's saying first, and he goes on to say, I had this really thick, or he's saying, I had this very strong New York accent. Now, accent, this is the way it sounds when someone speaks. Accent. For example, the people in the southern part of America have a strong accent. Accent. And then I just laugh. And Joe says, so right off the bat, or he's saying right away, immediately, right off the bat. For example, an example of right off the bat. I found a job right off the bat when I moved to San Francisco. Right off the bat. And Joe goes on to say, they knew right away that I was not from there. And then I laugh again and I say, right, just agreeing with him. And Joe says, it was obvious, or he's saying everyone knew, I was the new kid on the block. New kid on the block. This means new to an area, or new person to an area. New kid on the block. For example, when I first moved to San Francisco, I really felt like the new kid on the block. I did not even know where a grocery store was located. New kid on the block. And then I say, just agreeing with Joe. And then Joe says, and I looked different also because the style in New York was much different, or he's saying was very different than it was in Pennsylvania. Now, style. Style is fashion. Style. For example, I really liked the way the women in India were dressed when I was there. They have a much different style than the women in America. Style. Okay, this is the end of the vocabulary lesson for the conversation Moving as a Child, Part 1. If you feel that you need to, go back and listen as many times as you need to make sure that you understand or have a basic understanding of the vocabulary. And then when you're ready, move on to Joe's mini story. All right. See you for Moving as a Child Part 2. Bye-bye. Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss. And we just wanted to let you know that this material has been copyrighted in the year 2008 by Learn Real English, LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com. Hello, and welcome to the mini story lesson for the conversation Moving as a Child, Part 1. Let's get started with the story. Alex is 12 years old. He is an Army brat. His dad joined the Army before he was born. Alex and his parents had lived on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, they moved to America. Right off the bat, he hated it. The town they moved to was rural, so it was a culture shock after living on the moon. Everyone at school knew he was the new kid on the block. He did not have any friends. He really missed living on the moon. After 1 month, Alex started to play Little League sports. Then he made some friends. Soon he was feeling settled in. Now Alex really likes living in America, and he does not miss living on the moon anymore. Okay, so that's the end of the story. Now I'm going to read the story again, and this time I will ask you some questions. You can answer the questions out loud, and you can always pause your computer or iPod if you feel like you need a little more time to think before you answer the questions. And if you just feel like listening and not answering the questions, well, that's fine as well. Okay, let's get started. Alex is 12 years old. How old is Alex? 12 years old. Alex is 12 years old. Who is 12 years old? Alex. Alex is 12 years old. Is Alex or Andy 12 years old? Alex is. Alex is 12 years old. How many years old is Alex? Is he 12 or 15 years old? 12. Alex is 12 years old. He is an army brat. What is he? An army brat. He is an army brat. Is he an army brat or a plumber? An army brat. He is an army brat. Who is an army brat? Is Alex an army brat? Yes, he is. Alex is an army brat. Are his parents in the military? Yes, they are. He is an army brat, which means that his parents are in the military. And by the military, we mean the Army, or the Navy, or the Air Force, or the Marines. Does his family move a lot because they are in the military? Yes, they do. He is an army brat. And to be an army brat means that your parents are in the military and you move around a lot, and that you are a child, or that you are younger, let's say. So when we say he is an army brat, that means he has parents who are in the military and that they move around a lot as a result of them being in the military. His dad joined the army before he was born. Did his dad join the army before he was born? Yes, he did. His dad joined the army before he was born. What did his dad do? He joined the army. His dad joined the army. Did his dad join the army or go to college? He joined the army. His dad joined the army. Who joined the army? His dad. His dad joined the army. Did Alex join the army? No, Alex didn't join the army. He's only 12 years old. He can't join the army yet. Did his dad join the army? Yes, he did. His dad joined the army. Whose dad joined the army? Alex's. Alex's dad joined the army. Did Alex's dad or Alex's mom joined the army? His dad. His dad joined the army. What did his dad join? Did he join the Navy or the Army? The Army. He joined the Army. When did he join the Army? Well, he did it before Alex was born. He joined the Army before Alex was born. Did he join the Army last week? No, not last week. He joined it before Alex was born. Did he join the Army before Alex was born? Yes, he did. He joined the Army before Alex was born. Alex and his parents had lived on the moon for 2 years. Had Alex and his parents lived on the moon for 2 years? Yes, they did. Alex and his parents had lived on the moon for 2 years. Who had lived on the moon? Had Alex's grandmother lived on the moon? No, it wasn't Alex's grandmother. Had Alex lived on the moon? Yes, he had. Alex had lived on the moon. Had Alex's father lived on the moon? Yes, he had too. Had Alex's mother lived on the moon? Yes, she did. Alex and his parents had lived on the moon. So his mother had lived on the moon, his father had lived on the moon, and Alex as well had lived on the moon. Where had they lived? On the moon. They had lived on the moon. Had they lived on a farm? No, not a farm. Had they lived on the moon? Yes, they had lived on the moon. How long had they lived on the moon? 2 years. They had lived on the moon for 2 years. Had they lived on the moon 2 years or 11 days? 2 years. They had lived on the moon for 2 years. Had they lived on the moon for 2 or 7 years? 2. They had lived on the moon for 2 years. Had Alex and his parents lived on the moon for 2 years? Yes, they had. Alex and his parents had lived on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, they moved to America. Did they move to America out of the blue? Yes, they did. Out of the blue, they moved to America. Did they move to America suddenly? Yes, they moved to America out of the blue, which means that they moved to America suddenly. Did they move to America unexpectedly? Yes, they did. They moved to America out of the blue. And out of the blue means suddenly and unexpectedly. Did they expect to move to America? No, they did not. It was out of the blue, which means they did not expect to move. Who moved to America? Alex and his parents. Alex and his parents. Alex and his parents moved to America. Did Alex and his parents move to America out of the blue? Yes, they did. They moved to America out of the blue. Did Alex and his parents move to America suddenly and unexpectedly? Yes, they moved to America out of the blue, which is the same as saying they moved to America suddenly and unexpectedly. Out of the blue means suddenly and unexpectedly. Where did they move? To America. They moved to America. Did they move to France? No, they didn't move to France. Did they move to America? Yes, they did. They moved to America. Did they move to America out of the blue? Yes, they did. They moved to America out of the blue. They moved to America suddenly and unexpectedly. Right off the bat, he hated it. Did he hate it right off the bat? Yes, he did. He hated it right off the bat. Did he hate it right away? Yes, he did. He hated it right off the bat, which is the same thing as saying he hated it right away. Right off the bat means right away. Did he hate it immediately? Yes, he did. He hated it right off the bat, which is the same as saying he hated it immediately. Right off the bat means right away or immediately. Who hated it? Alex. Alex hated it. Did Alex or Andy hate it right off the bat? Alex. Alex hated it right off the bat. Did Alex hate it immediately? Yes, he did. He hated it right off the bat, which is the same as saying he hated it immediately. What did he hate? Did he hate living in America or flying to the moon? Living in America. He hated living in America. Did Alex hate living in America right off the bat? Yes, he did. Right off the bat, he hated it. He hated living in America right off the bat. Did Alex hate living in America right away? Yes, he did. He hated it right off the bat, which is the same as saying he hated it right away. The town they moved to was rural. Did they move to a town that was rural? Yes, they did. They moved to a town that was rural. What was rural? Well, the town they moved to. The town they moved to was rural. Was the town that they moved to rural? Yes, it was. The town that they moved to was rural. Did the town that they moved to have a lot of farmland? Yes, it did. It was rural, which is the same thing as saying it had a lot of farmland. Rural means it had a lot of farmland. Did they move to a city? No, they didn't move to a city. A city doesn't have a lot of farmland. A city is not rural. What was rural? Was New York rural? No, New York is definitely not rural. It is a big city. Was the town that they moved to rural? Yes, it was. The town that they moved to was rural. Did the town that they moved to have a lot of farmland? Yes, it did. The town that they moved to was rural, which is the same thing as saying the town that they moved to had a lot of farmland. Rural means it has a lot of farmland. So it was a culture shock after living on the moon. Was it a culture shock? Yes, it was. It was a culture shock. Was it uncomfortable? Yes, it was uncomfortable for them. It was a culture shock, which means that it was not comfortable. Was it a culture shock for him because the people were different than the people who live on the moon? Yes, it was. It was a culture shock, which means that it was uncomfortable when he went to another place because the people were different than the people from where he came from, which was the moon. So it was a culture shock. It was uncomfortable for him because the people were different than the people that he used to know on the moon. What was a culture shock? Was living in a rural town a culture shock? Yes, it was. Living in a rural town was a culture shock. And probably living in America was a culture shock after living on the moon. Did living in a rural town make them feel uncomfortable? Yes, it did. It was a culture shock, which means that they were uncomfortable. Did living in a town that had a lot of farmland make them feel uncomfortable? Well, they said that they moved to a rural town, so it was like a culture shock. So they were uncomfortable living in a rural area, and a rural area has a lot of farmland. So living in a town that had a lot of farmland made them feel uncomfortable or made them feel like it was culture shock. Everyone at the school knew he was the new kid on the block. Did everyone at school know that he was the new kid on the block? Yes, they did. Everyone at school knew that he was the new kid on the block. Did everyone at school know that he was new to the area? Yes, that's correct. They knew he was the new kid on the block, which means that they knew he was new to the area, or he was new to the school. When you're the new kid on the block, that means that you are new, and you've not been there before. So he was new to the area, or he was new to the school. He was the new kid on the block. What did everyone at school know? Well, they knew that he was the new kid on the block. Who knew? Everyone at school. Everyone at school knew. Who was the new kid on the block? Alex. Alex was the new kid on the block. Was Alex the new kid on the block? Yes. Yes, he was. Alex was the new kid on the block. Was Alex new to the school? Yes, he was. He was the new kid on the block. He was new to the school. Being the new kid on the block means that you are new to the area, or in this case, new to the school. Did only some people at school know that Alex was the new kid on the block? No. Everyone knew, not just some people. Everyone at school knew that he was the new kid on the block. He did not have any friends. Did he have any friends? No, he didn't. He did not have any friends. How many friends did he have? Well, he did not have any friends, so that means he had 0 friends. He had none. Who did not have any friends? Alex. Alex did not have any friends. Did he not have any friends or not have a bicycle? Friends. He did not have any friends. Did Alex have any friends? No, he did not. He did not have any friends. He really missed living on the moon. Did he really miss living on the moon? Yes, he did. He really missed living on the moon. Who really missed living on the moon? Alex. Alex really missed living on the moon. Did Alex or his mother really miss living on the moon? Alex. Alex really missed living on the moon. What did he miss? Well, he missed living on the moon. Did he miss his grandmother or living on the moon? Living on the moon. He missed living on the moon. Where did he miss living? On the moon or on a farm? On the moon. He missed living on the moon. After 1 month, Alex started to play Little League sports. Did Alex start to play Little League sports? Yes, he did. Alex started to play Little League sports. What did Alex start to do? To play Little League sports. He started to play Little League sports. Did he start to ride his bicycle or start to play Little League sports? Play Little League sports. He started to play Little League sports. Did he start to play sports on a team with other children? Yes, he did. He started to play Little League sports, which is the same thing as saying he started to play sports on a team with other children. Little League sports are a group of sports teams for children. Who started to play Little League sports? Alex. Alex started to play Little League sports. When did he start to play Little League sports? After 1 month. After 1 month, Alex started to play Little League sports. Did he start to play after 1 year or 1 month? 1 month. After 1 month. After how many months did he start to play? 1. After 1 month. Did he start to play Little League sports after 1 or 3 months? 1. After 1 month. Did he start to play sports on a team with other children after 1 month? Yes, he did. After 1 month, he started to play Little League sports. And Little League sports are a group of sports teams for children. So he started to play sports on a team with other children after 1 month. Then he made some friends. Did he make some friends? Yes, he did. He made some friends. What did he do? He made some friends. Did he ride his bicycle or make some friends? Make some friends. He made some friends. Who made some friends? Alex. Alex made some friends. Did Alex or his mother make some friends? Alex did. Alex made some friends. Did Alex make a cake or make some friends? He made some friends. Alex made some friends. Soon he was feeling settled in. How was he feeling? Settled in. Soon he was feeling settled in. Was he feeling settled in? Yes, he was. He was feeling settled in. Was he feeling adjusted to living there? Yes, he was. He was feeling settled in, which is the same thing as saying he was feeling adjusted to living there. Settled in means being adjusted to. Was he feeling uncomfortable living there? No, he was feeling settled in. Settled in does not mean uncomfortable. Who was feeling settled in? Alex. Alex was feeling settled in. Was Alex or Andy feeling settled in? Alex. Alex was feeling settled in. Was Alex feeling used to living there? Yes, he was. He was feeling settled in, which means he was feeling used to living there, or he had felt adjusted to living there. Settled in means being used to or being adjusted to. Now Alex really likes living in America. Does Alex really like living in America? Yes, he does. He really likes living in America. Does Alex hate living in America? No, he doesn't hate it. He really likes it. Who really likes living in America? Alex. Alex really likes living in America. Does Alex like living in America just a little? No, he really likes living in America, which means he likes it a lot. Does Alex like living in America a lot? Yes, he does. He really likes living in America. He likes it a lot. Where does Alex really like to live? In America. He really likes living in America. Does Alex really like to live in Paris? No, not Paris. Does Alex really like to live in America? Yes, he does. Alex really likes living in America. He really likes to live in America. And he does not miss living on the moon anymore. Does he miss living on the moon? No, he does not miss living on the moon anymore. Who doesn't miss living on the moon? Alex. Alex does not miss living on the moon. What does he not miss? Living on the moon. He does not miss living on the moon. Does Alex still wish he lived on the moon? No, he doesn't. He doesn't miss it anymore. Why doesn't Alex miss living on the moon? Well, because he really likes living in America now, so he no longer misses living on the moon. Okay, so we've come to the end of our story, and that means we are now at the end of the mini story lesson for the conversation Moving as a Child, Part 1. Now it is your turn to tell the story by yourself. Remember, you do not need to memorize every word, but you should use the idioms and the vocabulary words that we went over in the story. So, those are Army Brat, Out of the Blue, Right Off the Bat, Rural, Culture Shock, New Kid on the Block, Little League Sports, and Settled In. Now remember, you can listen to this lesson as many times as you need to in order to feel that you know the idioms and the vocabulary words well enough. So now please tell the story by yourself. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss. And we just wanted to let you know that this material has been copyrighted in the year 2008 by Learn Real English, LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com. Hi, welcome to the Point of View stories for Moving as a Child, Part 1. Today we're going to hear 4 different versions of the story from the mini-story lesson, Moving as a Child, Part 1. Each time I tell the story, I'm going to change the time in which the story is being told, or I'm going to change the person who is telling the story. So let's start by telling the story as if it's happening right now, or in the present. Okay, here we go. Alex is 12 years old. He is an army brat. his dad joins the army before he is born. Alex and his parents live on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, they move to America. Right off the bat, he hates it. The town they moved to is rural, so it is a culture shock after living on the moon. Everyone at school knows he is the new kid on the block. He does not have any friends. He really misses living on the moon. After 1 month, Alex starts to play Little League sports. Then he makes some friends. Soon, he is feeling settled in. Now, Alex really likes living in America, and he does not miss living on the moon anymore. Okay, so that's the end of the story being told as if it is happening right now. Next, let's hear the story as if it happened last year. Last year, Alex was 12 years old. He was an army brat. His dad joined the army before he was born. Alex and his parents lived on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, they moved to America. Right off the bat, he hated it. The town they moved to was rural, so it was a culture shock after living on the moon. Everyone at school knew he was the new kid on the block. He did not have any friends. He really missed living on the moon. After 1 month, Alex started to play Little League sports. Then he made some friends. Soon he felt settled in. Alex really liked living in America, and he did not miss living on the moon anymore. Okay, so that is the story as if it is happening in the past, as if it has already happened. Now let's hear the story as if it is happening in the future. So we will think of the story happening 4 years from now, or say in 4 years. Okay, here we go. In 4 years, Alex will be 12 years old. He'll be an army brat. His dad will join the army. Alex and his parents are gonna live on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, they'll move to America. Right off the bat, he'll hate it. The town they move to will be rural, so it'll be a culture shock after living on the moon. Everyone at school is going to know he is the new kid on the block. He won't have any friends. He is really going to miss living on the moon. After 1 month, Alex is going to start to play Little League sports. Then he's gonna make some friends. Soon, he'll be feeling settled in. Then Alex will really like living in America, and he won't miss living on the moon anymore. Okay, so that's the end of this version of the story, where we have the events take place 4 years from now. Notice that instead of saying something like, he will not miss, we shorten it by saying he won't miss. Won't is really the same thing as will not. It's probably more likely to be heard in spoken English than to be seen in written English. Alright, now let's hear the story from Alex's point of view. So in this version, Alex is going to be telling the story. Here we go. I am 12 years old. I am an army brat. My dad joined the army before I was born. My parents and I lived on the moon for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, we moved to America. Right off the bat, I hated it. The town we moved to is rural, so it is a culture shock after living on the moon. Everyone at school knows that I am the new kid on the block. I do not have any friends. I really miss living on the moon. After 1 month, I started to play Little League sports. Then I made some friends. Soon, I was feeling settled in. Now I really like living in America, and I do not miss living on the moon anymore. Alright, so that is the end of the point of view stories for the lesson Moving as a Child, Part 1. Now please go back and listen to each version of the story again. Then when you feel like you understand one of the stories, go back and tell that story on your own. Do this for each of the stories. And if you're having a little trouble, don't worry, just relax, take your time. And then when you're able to tell each of the stories on your own, then go to the next lesson. Okay, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss. And we just wanted to let you know that this material has been copyrighted in the year 2009 by Learn Real English, LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com